In this lesson, we will continue to look at the manipulators in C++. We will begin with some code already, and as you see in the Solution Explorer, here's the name of this file, cout more format options.c++. But we'll remove that to give ourselves more space to look at the code. In this example, we're going to look at some special cases for manipulators, and in particular, if you specify a manipulator for something, then what happens, and we will look at those cases because the system's going to override certain things. You will not be allowed to choose them. The example here is very similar to the lesson 4 option, or the example. There are some variables declared, and instead of having to type in the information, this time I've already assigned some values for these. So we have last name is a string set to Jones, first name is a string set to Sam. We have an unsigned integer for age and children, which have values 35 and 2. A initial set to the uppercase A. Wage is a float of 35.75. And then we have a double for hours and pay. Now we're going to look at some more ways to output these mixed data types, just to show you some different options that you have. One way that we can do this, instead of having a single line for everything, is that you can continue the output over several lines. So in this case, we will output the first name, and then I'm just going to go to another line, and we'll put the insertion operator or output here. So as long as you don't type a semicolon, then you can continue to do this. If I wanted to just put a space between the first name and the last name, then I could output a space, I could output last name, next, and on down the line. So let's do this. Let's do first name, a space, and then let's output the initial, and let's output another space. Okay, double quote, space, double quote, and then we'll output the last name. Okay, then let's output some other information here. So we can do let's do left, set width to 10, and let's output age. So let's say double quote age, space, double quote, and then the actual variable for age. And notice I'm not typing a semicolon on the right hand side for all this. I'm just continuing to output this big string of stuff to the console. Okay, so we know that if we want to continue to stay with the same width of 10, I can do that here. So we can do set width to 10. And we will output children. CHILDREN. And I wanted to make that a string constant. So let's put the double quotes around it. And then a variable. Set width has to be used every single time. Okay, the next thing is just going to be hours worked. Space there and a double quote. And that's just going to be hours. And this will be our last line. Let's output pay, so let's do set width 10 again. Double quote. Pay is equal to, and let's put a dollar sign. Let's put a space and then a dollar sign. Okay, double quote. And then we'll compute in line here, which is fine. Okay, hours times wage. And that will be the last of our output, so we'll put a couple of end lines here. And finally, a semicolon. Now, given all of this, and let's go back and fix my syntax error with a set width of 10, then you can see that this entire string or series of outputs can be done with a single cout statement. Right? So you can scatter these across several lines, and it will continue to be just fine until you type the semicolon to terminate the cout statement. Okay, so the highlighted stuff is one big cout statement. Alright, so now just to see what this looks like, let's build it and run it, and you'll see that I've got a system pause, so we'll stop at this point. Okay, we are compiling, and I've pressed the execute button. So you can see what our output looks like here. Now we may need to make a little change to this because things seem to be showing up on the same line, so I've left out some end lines. But at any rate, we can see you have the first name is Sam, initial A, Jones, age 35, and then children 2, hours worked 40, pays 14.30. But I wanted to have these on separate lines, so I need to go back and put some end lines in there. So let's do that. So after each one, after I print out, I want the first name, the initial, or the last name to be on the same line. But the other stuff I want to be on different lines. So after last name, I'll put an end line here. And to make it quick, I will just copy the end line and I'll paste it after each of these other lines. And then we already have the two double end lines at the very end. Now let's build this and run it again. It is built and it is running. So now you can see the output. Sam Jones, one line. The age is going to be output in a field width of 10, and it's left justified because of what we did here. The left stays in place. Set width has to be used for each one. We have the children, the hours worked, and the pay, and I did have a space right here before the age, which caused that to be shifted over a little bit. But anyway, the point here is that you can do all this with one cout statement. Now, moving on, I will first of all go in and take that space out. But let's look at how to output this data in a different way. The same information. So let's do a cout. And in this case, I am going to use a concatenation operator. So we're going to output first name as before, and it should be an I there. So we have first name, and if you want to concatenate several things together on the output, you can use the plus operator. So plus is a concatenation operator, so you build up a line of output. Okay, so we're going to have first name plus, and then we'll put a space after that using plus again. We'll do last name plus, and then another space surrounded by double quotes. And I would like to put the initial in there. So I did first name plus last name. So let's make that initial instead. I-N-I-T-I-A-L. And then a plus, and a double quote, space double quote, and another plus. That's what I really wanted to do. So that's what I want here, and then we will just add plus end line. Alright, now actually with the end line you have to do the insertion operator there. Alright, now I can concatenate these things together because first name, initial, and last name, they are either strings or they are characters, and then the spaces that go between them, they're also type characters. So if you have a lot of stuff that is a string or a character, then you can concatenate those together in the same way that you may have used a concatenation for strings in the past. So that allows us to output the first name, the initial, the last name. And then we can output some of the other stuff. Let me just copy and paste a little bit of that. Actually, no, I'll just type it in. Okay, so we'll do cout. Since I did use the semicolon over at the end, we have to start a new cout statement. So we'll do cout age equals to, okay, double quote. I need to start that with a double quote. The insertion operator and output age with an end line. Now let's follow that up with children. Cout double quote children space double quote, and a number of children, children is the variable, and end line. Okay, hours worked. Put the insertion operator in, the hours worked, and this is one special thing I want to show you. We just did this earlier, hours and end line, semicolon, and now, and we'll also output the hours in a different way. Now what I want to do here is we have the first name, and we have the concatenation operator and ordinary stuff we've done before with the age, the children, and the hours. Now this is going to print out the hours just as we have set it up here. The hours is 40, so it'll show up as 40. And let's go ahead and stop it at this point and compile it and look at what that output is. Here's the output screen, and the system pause has stopped us after our first example, so I'll hit enter, or I'll just hit the space key, and we'll see what we just output here. So now you can see that we have the first name with the concatenation operator. It gives us the same result, Sam A. Jones. Age is 35, children 2, hours worked is 40. And notice the 40 is exactly as the way we initialized it, 40 and nothing else. Now let's suppose we would like to actually see this represented as a real number. We want to see a point there. We want to see a dot. So one thing that we can do now is let's print this out a different way. Let's do another C out. And let's also say hours here. Okay, hours worked. And in parentheses, I'm going to say with a new manipulator, set point, P-O-I-N-T, with set point, okay, double quote. Now, to use the set point manipulator, then it is simply the word set point. So if you are outputting in a fixed format, in a fixed format mode, then you can use set point, and then you can output the value. In this case, we want hours again. Okay, hours, and an end line. And I made a mistake. It's not set, it's show point. I thought that was wrong. Okay, show point and show point, not set. There we go. So you can use the show point manipulator to force the printing of at least a dot after your real number. And depending upon what your settings are, you might get some zeros after that as well. Now let's go on and let's finish this up with the C out, and we're going to print out the value for the pay. So let's do C out, okay, fixed, set precision to 2, like we've done before. Okay, and let's output a $sign, and let's output the pay, which the pay is actually we have to calculate the pay. So let's do hours times wage. Okay, an end line and another end line. Okay, so this last thing that I've added, we have hours worked in the normal fashion, and here is our new manipulator show point, and we'll print out the value for hours. And then we'll finish up this output with stuff we've seen before, with fixed and the set precision of 2, a $sign, and what the pay is actually going to be. Okay, so let's build this and see what the output looks like. Our program is now executing, so I'll hit space key to get to our output. And now let's look at what we have. Alright, so another output of the same data. We have Sam Jones, age, children, and so on. But notice hours worked 40 comes from here. But if we are really wanting to see a data point or a decimal, then we can use the show point prior to printing the hours. And we will get a period. And we have 4 digits, which just happens to be the default of how this particular environment works on the right. And then finally at the bottom we have the set precision of 2, fixed, and the pay is 1430. So show point is one of the new manipulators that you might want to use. The next thing we'll look at is what happens if you try to specify a scientific or a fixed format for something that turns out to be an integer. All right, we declared age up at the top to be an unsigned integer. Let's take a quick look at that. Okay, so age is an unsigned integer, and so is children. Now let's experiment. Let's see what happens if we try to do some specifications to this and print them out in a way that is different than what an unsigned integer would look like. So we'll print out output options, the format for the age, and age is just the usual way. Okay, now we'll get the value for age. Let's attempt to output it in scientific format. So let's set the output to scientific. So we'll do cout and just the word scientific and a semicolon. Then let's output age again. Okay, let's do cout and we'll just print age, end line, and end line. Now what will that give us? Will it really try to give us a scientific format or not? Okay, so to experiment we will build it. The build was successful, so let's run it. And we have to hit enter a couple of times or space to get down to that example. Okay, one more time. Output options, cout format for age. Okay, so this was the typical way. We'd get age as 35, as you would expect. Then, when we do set it to scientific and try to output the result, then we can see that we say set scientific, but it doesn't matter. Okay, it still prints 35. So in the case of trying to output variables that are a given type in a different kind of format, then you can see that that is not always going to work. So we tried to set scientific for age, but age still prints out with 35, and there is no scientific notation over here. Now, continuing, let's close this. In a similar fashion, let's see what happens if we try to output an unsigned integer in fixed format. So remember, fixed is should give us a real number, but it would not be in scientific notation. So let's do cout. Okay, fixed, semicolon. Okay, cout age, and a couple of end lines. With a semicolon. And we'll see what happens there. And to save a little bit of time, let's go ahead and I can tell you now that it's still an integer value, an unsigned integer, so the type is still going to be an unsigned integer. Fixed is not going to cause us to get a decimal point here. So in a similar fashion, let's see what happens if we try to set a precision for an unsigned integer value. And that will not work either. But to prove it, let's do cout set set precision to 3, semicolon, and let's do cout, and let's do a couple of things here. Let's print age is equal to double quote age, and let's also print out children. We'll print out both of them, and end line, end line. And this time we are going to find out whether or not fixed and set precision works. So let's go ahead and build it. The compilation succeeded, so now we see the output. So let's make our window bigger, and we'll just hit enter to get down to the second case. Here's a third case where we tried to work with age. So now here we are with the last one and the last two cases. So we used a set fixed at this point where we wanted to print out age as a fixed number, but as you can see, it still gives us a value 35. Now the last case we were trying to change the precision. So we did a set precision of 3, and we printed out age and children, but still, since that those two variables are unsigned integer, then we still get them printed as an unsigned integer, so it ignores set precision. It ignores fixed. It ignores scientific. So in some cases, you can see that the system is going to override things, and that's kind of the way it ought to be, I suppose. Well, that concludes this particular video on what can happen when you're trying to use manipulators to force things to happen that the system will not allow you to do.